Investors show Off with the Helmets. I'm Brady Tinker, and I'll do it again just in case. Welcome to Off with the Helmets. I'm Brady Tinker. It's time to talk Cowboys football, courtesy of East Coast Sports Investors. So glad you found us on this Wednesday afternoon. Plenty of updates for you, and all of them joyous, aren't they? Because the biggest game in 26 years happened on Monday night against the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL, and the Cowboys somehow or another were going to find a way to lose it. Only you got to admit, I've been telling you for weeks, this isn't the same organization and the same team that has been befuddling you and disappointing you for 26 years. And I crossed my fingers, hope that I was somewhat prophetic, and I was. As the super wild card round is complete, your Dallas Cowboys stood the hell up, winning in Tampa versus the unbeatable Tom Brady, 31-14, and it was an ass whipping. They didn't just win, they kicked Tom's ass right out of Tampa Bay. Tom's departure from Tampa was hastened by Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons, and these new, as I told you, Dallas Cowboys. Let's talk divisional round playoffs and revel just a little bit more in Monday night's victory. Victory? There's no X in victory. Victory coming up next on Off of the Helmets. So here we go, a little reveling because it was so damn much fun. I sat with my girlfriend, who is a massive Cowboys fan, prepared to have to console her if needed. She was worried, but always confident and cocky. I like that about her. And the Cowboys came through. 2 straight 3-and-outs to begin the game had all of us a little bit nervous, but the good news was the defense trotted right out on the field, got in Tom's face, and they got off the field with 2 straight 3-and-outs as well. So it's a push, and I began to feel better and breathe a little bit easier. And then 7 plays, 80 yards, mixed in with some Pollard, some Gallup, some Noah Brown, and some Dalton Schultz for a 22-yard touchdown. And the Cowboys have a lead, and now I'm thinking, here they come. The team that I've been looking for and that everyone's been looking for essentially since the Minnesota game looks like they might be here. Only one little hiccup. There was a missed extra point by Brett Maher. Not to worry, he's had essentially his best year in his NFL career. He only missed 3 of those all year. Cowboys will be just fine. 6-0 Cowboys. Here came the Bucs. 14 plays, 70 yards, driving down the field, just like you expect Tom Brady would to answer, only he gets hit just as he's releasing the ball, decides to try and throw it away out of the back of the end zone. He doesn't throw it far enough, and the Cowboys get an interception, and it is a 3, 6, or 7-point turnaround, and it is the most timely thing any of us have ever seen because right before the play, the broadcasting team puts up a beautiful graphic that says in Tom's 58 years in the league, he's got 89 touchdowns in the red zone, he's got 34 field goals in the red zone, and guess what he never has in the red zone? Interception. A big 0. None. And 18 seconds later, he throws a pick to Javon Curse in the back of the end zone, and I knew everything was going to be just fine. Cowboys came right back, 15 plays, 80 yards, and on 4th and 2 from the goal line, and it was a long 2, I am sitting there saying, I know it's 6 and not 7, but I don't think there's going to be that many points scored in this game. Kick the damn field goal. Kick the field goal. And the Cowboys stay on the field, and I'm getting texts and people saying, why are they doing this? And my quick answer is, this is where coaches and teams have a play that they love. If they have it, they're going to run it. They had it. A beautiful job of ball handling by Dak Prescott, a naked bootleg out to the right. He goes untouched into the end zone, and the Cowboys have scored twice in a row, and it's going to be 13-0, only it's not, because Maher misses another extra point. And right away, you begin to see the look on his face of a man who is puzzled, perplexed, and potentially has the yips. 11 plays, 91 more yards. T.Y. and Lamb are finally involved, and Gallup and Schultz for another TD, and it's going to be 19-0, and the Cowboys are effing rolling. Only another Maher mixed extra point. And you're thinking, 18-0. Tampa has shown nothing against our wonderful defense. Our offense has now figured it out. They're getting on the edges with some runs. They're spreading the ball around. Dak looks like a completely different human, the one you saw in Week 18, and everything's great. But in the back of your mind, along with me, you're thinking, sure like the sound of 21 a lot better than I like the sound of 18. 18-0 at half. But I wish we had 21. And Tom gets the ball to start the second half, and it's Tom. And they're going to go right down and score. And this is going to be slightly less than a 2-score game because of missed extra points. Only Tom gets the ball, and the Cowboys defense comes right out and does what it has done the entire game. The defense is nasty. They put pressure on Tom, 3 and out again to start the second half. And literally I wouldn't say it out loud because I hate jinxing myself and or my team. I thought the game was over. And as it turns out, it was. 3 and out to begin the second half. Message sent and also message received. Tom looked perplexed, frustrated, bummed out, and certainly not like a man who was going to start mounting touchdown drives, of which he was going to need at least 4 or 5 in the second half. 8 plays, 86 yards again, including 2 long plays of 26 yards. Do the Cowboys go again to take the lead, predictably now 24-0, because no effing way Maher has missed his 4th extra point. 24-0, and you're still thinking could be 28, should be 28. 28's a lot. Isn't that what it was when Atlanta coughed up a Super Bowl to Tom Brady? I think so, something like that. Anyway, it didn't make any difference because the ender was coming. The Bucs get the ball back, and now this is it. Gotta go. 8 plays, 10 yards, 1:54, and the Bucs turn it over to the Cowboys on downs. Turnover number 2 unofficially. The game ends 31-14, 2 meaningless touchdowns thrown in to pad Tom's stats a little bit, and maybe Julio Jones, who ends up the receiver of the game for the Buccaneers, 7 for 74 and a touchdown. And it might be the last time you see either one of them play. Fine with me. Tom ends up 351 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Sounds kind of nice, doesn't it? Except for he threw 66 desperation passes because there was 0 running game that was perpetrated against your Dallas Cowboys defense, something earlier in the season that they struggled a little bit with, right? They didn't tackle quite as good. They were getting beat a little on the edges with that crackback block, et cetera, et cetera. You remember it. We've all been through it together. They couldn't run the ball for shit. They got their number 1 center back. That was supposed to buoy them. Their left guard had been playing well, et cetera, et cetera. Their tackles were intact, and maybe this offensive line was going to be as good as it had been maybe since game 1 when playoff Leonard Fournette hung 127 on the Cowboys. Not to be. The Cowboys shut down the running game. Tom gave up on it. The Buccaneers gave up on it. They threw it 66 times. They threw it about 4 yards per play in front of them. Nothing happened deep down the field. And Micah and company turned this game off at 24-0. Micah mentioned after the game, the light is different when it's shined on Dak Prescott, because all of us wanted to know, what do you think about him overcoming a really bad Week 18 and the constant talk of him leading the NFL in interceptions? What do you think about all that? And Micah said, quote, the light is different on Dak, and in many ways it's unfair. Well, welcome to being a quarterback in the NFL, and even more so, welcome to being a quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. And by the way, get used to it, Micah Parsons, because that light is going to shine that brightly on you if you continue this type of play. When you have a 5-sack season for whatever reason, we will be up your ass. So it's not just about Dak. It will also be about you, because if he's the best player on the team, you're clearly the second best player. Just a reminder, get used to it, Micah. It's coming for you as well. So a near perfect game. Dak was exactly who we all know he can be. We've seen it. We've seen it before. We've seen it earlier in his career, actually, probably a little bit more often. There's been a catastrophic ankle and knee injury since that time. There's been self-doubt, mostly, I believe, about the physical ability of what that knee and ankle can do. And it carried into the first game of this year when he got hurt with the hand. And all along, once they got to the point where they were 4-2 and Dak was coming back, I said, might be the best thing that happened to Prescott, because he wasn't himself in week number 1. He still doubted the leg, and you could see it. You could absolutely see it. So essentially 6 weeks off, he comes back. He's had time to get the hand right, but certainly a sidebar story as far as I'm concerned, because how does he now feel 6 weeks later in quiet workouts, working out his lower half? Everything about Dak has to do, to be honest with you, with his lower half. Hitting his back foot and firing that football, being able and willing to break the pocket and run 4 or 5 times a game, which would be key, which would advance the Cowboys running game, which is ultimately so important to him and this team. Those things were important. And when he got back, he looked better. Week to week, he looked better. There were too many interceptions, but, quote, we're going to stay aggressive. We went through this process with him. And the problem was we got all the way to week 18 with more interceptions, and you lead the NFL in interceptions in 11 starts. That doesn't sound great, and has buoyed the confidence of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I guess not. The Cowboys ran it 35 times. Dak, 7 of those times. Perfect. We left here before the game, and I said, listen, if you can get 80 out of Pollard, but he hits 3 or 4 double-digit runs where the defense is like, he might take it to the house. We got to pay attention to 20. It's exactly what happened. He had 18, 12, and 9 in 77 yards rushing, maybe 20 receiving, and it wasn't a monster Pollard game, but it was enough. It was just enough to keep that defense backed up and worried about what would happen in the run. Dak added to that with his 7 for 25, whatever it was. The number didn't make any difference. It was that Dak was a dual threat, and the team knew it. I don't really have anything to say about that game that isn't great news. There were a couple of minor injuries. Everybody at this point, as I sit here on Wednesday, is preparing to play on Sunday in San Francisco. More updates on that, and I'll have all of the answers for you on Friday about this. But we must discuss Brett Maher. Now, I've been in the locker room with Brett Maher. I've talked to him. Do I like him? Absolutely. Is he stand up whenever he missed a big field goal or something happened? Did Maher skitter out of the room? Absolutely not, and he did not on Monday as well. Stands in front of the damn locker, puts his chin up, owns up to the questions, and tells you what he felt, what he thought, what he can do, and what he can't do, and his own disappointment in letting his team down in any manner. That's who Brett Maher is. But we also have to face up to the fact that Brett Maher has been cut from 5 NFL teams, including this one, and 4 CFL teams. So this is not a career great kicker. This is a good kid, a good athlete who's had his best year ever for the Dallas Cowboys, including a couple of 60-yarders. But it's sort of a dream, and the dream sort of crumbled a little bit, and I'm not sure I know why, but we've all seen some version of the yips, haven't we? And isn't that what we saw? I don't know the answers, and I'm sure the Cowboys feel like they have a much better handle than you and I do on what the answers are. Not what happened, we saw it, but why did it happen? And that has caused them to this point, as I got up this morning and started working at 8:30 in the morning right here on this show and some other things. There was no answer from the Cowboys other than Dak and everyone else saying, we know him, we love him, we know who he is. Everyone has a bad day. Dak was like, I was awful in week 18. He even cussed. I was awful. And no one gave up on me, and I ain't giving up on Maher, and neither is anyone else here. I appreciate every bit of that sentiment. I appreciate loyalty and team. And hey, this has been our guy all year. I appreciate all that. But there are different ways to show that. You don't have to cut Brett Maher. You can say, we're giving you a week off because the yips are real. Let's go back to baseball a little bit. And if you're younger, you may not remember any of these names or numbers or instances, but if you're a little bit older, you will. And if you're young, just shut up and listen for a second, because John Lester was one hell of a pitcher. I mean, he was great. He was left-handed. He was nasty. He was built not only to be a great pitcher, but a playoff and postseason pitcher. He was nails for several different teams. But there came a point in about the 11th or 12th year of his career when John Lester, the left-handed pitcher who's staring at the runner on first, couldn't throw to first base to hold the runner close. And everyone began to know it. You ain't keeping any secrets. They began running on him. They began stealing on him. And Lester ends up in the playoffs with a ground ball or any ground balls back to him. He has to throw it to first, and he can't. And a key play, as he was a Cubs pitcher in a playoff game, the ball came back to him and luckily stuck in the webbing of his glove, and he ran towards first base and tossed his entire glove underhanded to the first baseman for an out. But those were dicey times for John Lester. For the Cardinals, a little bit farther back, a really unbelievable left-handed starting pitcher named Rick Ankiel came out. He was, if you're a baseball guy, a top prospect, maybe top 5 overall prospect in baseball. You know the Cardinals, they always do something great with those guys, and they end up becoming great pitchers, and Ankiel can't miss. Only, I don't know, 6 months into his career, he'd gotten maybe 10 starts one year, and he comes back and he's going to be the guy next year, and he can't throw the ball to the catcher. About every third pitch goes flying into the net behind home plate. Got so bad that he never overcame it, and Rick Ankiel, being the athletic stud that he was, grabbed a bat and learned how to be an outfielder, and I think hit as many as 28 home runs in a season, but he never could be a pitcher again and throw the ball to the catcher. The Twins had a second baseman who was an all-star multiple times named Chuck Knobloch. He was the American League Rookie of the Year, and I don't know what year, and you don't care. But he played in playoff games, and he was something, and he was a second baseman. And he would get in front of the ball, and he would angle himself so he pointed right at the first baseman. You've seen it, pretty basic stuff. He makes the shortest throw in baseball probably to the first baseman, only all of a sudden he couldn't. He would 3-hop it, 10-hop it. He would pull it, he would push it, and he had a full-blown case of the yips. An all-star, a guy who was a borderline, one of the best players the Twins had ever had on their team, can't throw the ball from second base to first base. And last but not least, because I loved him and I loved the Mets and I loved the name Mackey Sasser, a catcher for the New York Mets and a very good catcher actually at throwing the ball to second base and getting runners trying to steal third base as well. Mackey Sasser all of a sudden ran into a problem where he couldn't, from his squat or standing up or in any manner, throw the ball back to the pitcher. Relatively key. So these things are all real, and none of them that I know of in my lifetime in watching these guys and in suffering with them, feeling badly for them, got over it in 6 days. There is no suck it up, buttercup, get over it. The yips are a real thing. And one thing that doesn't make them better is going from one playoff game where you have been utterly and completely awful. You've been over. Doesn't get better when you're traveling to San Francisco to play a next level divisional playoff game in San Francisco against a great team on a grass, wet, muddy field because it's San Francisco in an open air stadium where the wind is no doubt going to blow and swirl and kicks are going to be tough even if you are on point. And that is where we stand. It rarely just goes away. Levi Stadium in San Francisco ain't as bad as Candlestick because it's newer, but it's natural grass. It's open air. The wind is going to swirl. And by the way, San Francisco is about 70% better as a team than the one you just whipped in Tampa. You're going to have to not only be that good, you're going to have to be better in relation to who it is you're playing. No, the punter Brian Anger has never been a kicker. That was something I asked. No, there is no kicker on the practice squad. So I looked around and I found Matt Amendola kicked for the Chiefs for a while this year in place of Butker, who had a leg injury. He went 3 for 4, 13 for 19 in his career for New York Jets, Arizona, and KC. Meh. Austin Siebert kicked for the Lions this year, went 3 for 5 and did have a 48-yarder. In his career, 44 for 55. That's 80%. Now you're talking. Minnesota, Washington, and Philly. I want him here. Sam Ficken was the other name that I found. No kicks since 2020, but 35 for 48 in his career at 73%. For the New York Jets and the LA Rams, 12 for 22 from 40 to 59. He has some leg. If it's me, those guys would have been at the Star in Frisco when Jerry, Steven, McCarthy, and company got off the airplane. And I would have had them in the indoor practice facility, 2 of them, 3 of them, whoever I can get here, kicking. And I would have done what a lot of us have done around the batting cage through the years, where you hear that sound. Joey Gallo used to make that sound. Barry Bonds made that sound. That sound when bat hits ball and you know it's different. It's not just a home run. It's going to be majestic. You hear the same thing with great kickers in a great run. When they kick the ball, especially in closed air stadiums, and you hear it, it's a thump, not a thud. That's what I would be looking for. If none of these 3 guys had it, then maybe I don't sign one. But I probably do just to have on the practice squad, just in case, heaven forbid, Brett Maher disappears because he's so scared that he can't even go to San Francisco. Who knows that's not going to happen? And that's not an indictment on him at all. That's not what I mean. The point is he has the yips and no one's going to do anything about it. You're actually going to go to San Francisco with Kumbaya saying, we've all had troubles. We love him. We love him. Are you kidding? Did you watch the game? If you watch the game, the head coach had no intention from basically mid-second or mid-third quarter on of putting the young man on the field to do anything except try and kick an extra point. And if Jeff Heath, the old safety, had been there, he'd have probably kicked the extra point. You know, we'd seen that done before. So nothing, I'm shocked and dismayed. But right before I sit down, you may or may not have seen this, the Cowboys have signed someone you never heard of. Kicker Tristan Vizcaino. He is now, quote, from the Cowboys, to cover just in case, and signed for the practice squad. Exactly what I asked for. I don't know anything about him. I'm sure he's a fine young man, but you have to have at least a subtle opportunity for a backup. You do. And if you love Maher and you want to give him full playoff money, even if he can't kick, then do it. Then don't cut him. Cut someone else. Play one man short for these last 3 games as you try and go to the Super Bowl and win. By the way, here is Tristan Vizcaino. Only 10 of 15 on extra points since 2021. Here's the kicker that was good news and why they probably signed him. He has played for the San Francisco 49ers. In 2020, he was 3 for 3 on field goals in San Francisco. So he's been in the stadium, open air, grass, wind swirling. He has some familiarity with walking out on that field and kicking to either end of those end zones and what it feels like, what the ground feels like. All of those things that are weird and seem like they're nothing are something to a kicker, and especially a kicker who's got the damn yips. So here he is, just in case, Tristan Vizcaino. By the way, he did kick this year in New England. He was 2 for 2 on field goals, 35 yards and 46 yards, and 3 for 3 on extra points. Just in case you care, he went to the University of Washington, and he was born somewhere in the great state of California. So that's the update on the kicker. There is an extra kicker around somewhere, kicking somewhere. I don't know how they're handling it, but there is someone here, and you'll hear his name, Tristan Vizcaino. And I don't know if I say hopefully you won't see him in San Francisco. I'll say this. Hopefully you see in San Francisco the kicker who is kicking the best the last 3 or 4 days, who's making the loudest noise, who looks like he is completely at ease, letting his legs swing and thump a football as hard as he can and taking what comes with it. Because at this point, I didn't see that in Brett Maher, and I have high doubts, no offense, I have high doubts in a season this important, in a game this important, that Brett Maher takes a Band-Aid, a glass of scotch, or anything else that makes him feel better, or a group hug from his team, and he is just ready to be in San Francisco for this game. If he kicks it, great, and I'll report that to you on Friday. Then they're going to take him, and he's better, fine. But I sure as hell hope he's seen a shrink. I sure as hell hope someone digs into his brain a little bit and says, what happened? Because you appeared to choke and or get the yips a little bit in a game that our team was in control of almost from the get-go. It wasn't, oh, this is a really close game and you might need to kick 3 field goals over 50 yards and you might need to win this one for us. It wasn't that at all. It was, hey, do you mind running out there and kicking 4 extra points? And the answer was, sure, I'll go, but I can't come anywhere near making any of them. And I guess he finally made one. But you can't have it. This isn't best friends anymore or hugs and kisses. This is, since week 5, 6, 7, this team, this organization, this ownership, Steven and Jerry have said this is a championship-type football season. We are on a championship-type run. They said it out loud. They said it proud. And I agreed, and I think most of you did too. All of you wanted to look and see what reminded you of the last 26 years. I understand that, but the truth is this team won 12 games again for the second time in a row. Only 2 teams have won 24 games in the last 2 years, the Chiefs and the Cowboys. That's it. So this is a good team, but you can't send a kicker who's mind-effed to San Francisco. You just can't. So now, a brief look at San Francisco, and we will get much deeper into this on Friday. San Francisco went 13-4. The Cowboys went 12-5. As the line comes out, I am a little bit surprised, and I would say that Vegas is leaning Dallas. I expected this line with San Francisco being winners of 11 straight games. They have not lost since they traded for Christian McCaffrey, and I thought the line would be 5. It is 3.5. Some places it's 4. The over and under, if you care, is 46 as they head to Santa Clara, California to play this divisional playoff game. McCaffrey has been terrific since he's gotten back. They've done everything right, but that's not the story. The story for the 49ers and for all of us to appreciate is that San Francisco started this season with a young, tall, strapping quarterback with a giant arm and fast legs from North Dakota State who was in his second year, who they had decided was going to be the guy. You may not even remember this, but Trey Lance went to North Dakota State, had his rookie year last year, did some learning, and they decided based on this offense, the genius of this offensive game plan and offensive coordinator and head coach, we're going to do this. It's not Jimmy Garoppolo anymore or anybody else we might bring in. It's Trey Lance. In his first game against the Bears, he went against another young quarterback who was a dual threat, and the two of them both sucked. Lance wasn't very good. In the middle of his second game, he gets an injury, and he's out for the year. So the 49ers have spent the entire offseason getting ready for young Trey Lance and all the nuances of their offense that they had to fine-tune or tweak a little bit so that they were comfortable for him. Now they got to change him again. The good news for them is they still had Jimmy Garoppolo. So he's known this offense, I don't know, for 8 years, whatever it is, and had success and actually been to a Super Bowl with this team. So thank goodness you have Jimmy Garoppolo, because news early in the year was he was available for trade. They were offering him back to New England or some other teams if they could get a good pick for for him. Nobody offered them enough, and thus they acquiesced and kept Jimmy Garoppolo just in case. Thank goodness for them. Garoppolo comes in for Trey Lance and goes 5-0 and is playing great. And then he breaks an ankle, severe break, and he is out for the year. No Trey Lance, number one. No Jimmy Garoppolo, who's been there and who's been to a Super Bowl, number two. Now the 49ers are relegated to go to a guy named Brock Purdy, who was a quarterback at Iowa State, who was drafted in this draft. As a matter of fact, the 22-year-old was the 262nd player in the draft in 2022. Guess what that means? He was the last pick of the draft, often referred to as Mr. Irrelevant. Let's talk about Mr. Irrelevant people. The last one that really played at quarterback was a guy named Chad Kelly. He played for Denver in 2017 for a game or two, because who hasn't played for Denver at quarterback since Peyton Manning retired? He didn't do much, and he isn't in the league anymore that I know of. The most decorated Mr. Irrelevant you just watched actually Monday night. His name is Ryan Suckup. He's a kicker who's had a very, very good career for 4 or 5 different teams, and Suckup had exactly 0 points against the Cowboys on Monday night as Tampa was pressed into go. I think he missed the first extra point, and they were pressed into going for 2. So that is your most decorated Mr. Irrelevant, Ryan Suckup, who your team held to 0 on Monday. So Brock Purdy went to Iowa State. He is 6-0 as a San Francisco 49er. Damn impressive. I mean, unbelievable impressive, because he did not get a lot of meaningful reps prior to having to come in week, whatever that was, 10 or 11. Who's he played? If you're looking for chinks in the armor, because he hasn't lost yet, how's that possible? They played Tampa when they were probably at their lowest, Seattle at home, Washington, the Las Vegas Raiders, Arizona, and then Seattle at home again in the playoffs. Seattle's certainly not a bad team, but that's the best team that he's played, and he's played them twice. Impressive, but not murderer's row numbers. The defense is what's really good. The close game where Brock had some struggles, they went to Las Vegas to try and secure the number 2 seed against the Raiders and almost coughed it up and won 37-34 in overtime. Their defense is almost impenetrable, it seems. They overall were ranked the number 1 defense in all of the NFL. They only gave up points 3 times that you would even notice: 34 to Oakland in week 17 or 18, 44 to the Chiefs, and 28 to Atlanta, which I thought was a little bit odd, but Atlanta averaged more points than I thought. San Francisco, as I said, is the league's top-ranked defense. They are number 5 in points allowed at 18.4. They are number 5 in the NFL at 4 yards per overall play. They have 44 sacks, which renders them 10th. Cowboys, by the way, tied for 3rd at 54. Here's another little chink in the armor, besides the rookie quarterback who hasn't played anybody really good and who hasn't seen a pass rush like the Cowboys are going to bring. The other thing is San Francisco, in this very good defense, was 7th from the bottom in the NFL in passing yards allowed. Now, they didn't give up that many touchdown passes, but passing yards allowed. So in theory, between the 20s, San Francisco's secondary could be had a little bit. 10th in sacks means they get pressure, but they aren't unrelenting. They essentially have one really good player in Nick Bosa, who probably has stolen Defensive Player of the Year from Micah Parsons because he was great at the end of the season. And frankly, Micah was tired, and the numbers got big for Bosa in terms of sacks. 20 touchdown passes given up by San Francisco, 20 interceptions caught by San Francisco. A completion percentage against San Francisco of 66% and 3,800 yards, which is 223 yards per game passing, is number 24 in the NFL. So I was looking for something to give you to think about in the next few days. That would be it. One, a rookie quarterback who's been great, but he ain't played this defense, and a secondary that gives up yards through the air. Now, can the Cowboys cash? Going into the game on Monday night against Tampa, the Cowboys were 3rd in the NFL in cashing points in the red zone, and they continue to do that. They were 3rd in the NFL in converting 3rd downs. Both marvelous offensive statistics, and both things that are keys to team winning games, not settling for field goals and not going 3 and out. The Cowboys have been great about both of those things all season. As we watched in Tampa, they were phenomenal in that game at both. All good news. So let's hang on to those. The San Francisco, let's see, they played good offenses. Really, that was the other thing. San Francisco's the number 1 defense. Okay, who they play? Kansas City, who scored 44. Oakland, who was pretty good on offense, who scored 34. Atlanta scored 28. Who else did they play that was good at offense? The Chargers, right, are good, but not prolific scoring. They held them to 16. The Dolphins, who were good if Tua was there, and he was there when they beat him, and they held him to 17. But frankly, San Francisco's defense is terrific. The team is deep and well coached, and they know what they're doing. But frankly, they didn't play very many good offenses. They got none of Dallas, Philly, Buffalo, Cincinnati, or Minnesota, and they did get Kansas City and gave up 44. So that's good bar talk or water cooler talk if you want. By Friday, I will know how the Cowboys plan to inflict Micah Parsons, Tank, Dorrance, Sam Williams, Osei Odigizua, just because I like to say it, and Jonathan Hankins on this young 22-year-old Brock Purdy, who's still wet behind the ears from Iowa State by way of Queen Creek, Arizona. Just thought you'd want to know. He's the target as we sit here now. More on Friday, getting you ready for this. But isn't it a celebration? Isn't it good to be in Dallas when the Cowboys are good? And by the way, the Cowboys are good. I'll look forward to seeing you on Friday. I'll give you all the updates on injuries, as much game plan as I got, interviews, quotes, fun things, whatever it is that we need, we'll have for you on Friday as the Cowboys head joyously to the divisional round in San Francisco. I'm Brady Tinker for Off of the Helmets, courtesy right here of East Coast Sports Investors.